Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You're tuned to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere on all the major platforms, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, blah, 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 because I'm here to balance out all the bad news that's out there with some good news. What's right with people, what's right with me, what's right with you, and what's right with the world. And today, we're going to start with the question of the day, followed by a great interview with Seth Greenleaf, with someone that I met through our mutual friend, Anson Williams. You'll remember him as Potsy on Happy Days, and he's been on my show several times. And if you want to see my interviews with Anson, go to my YouTube channel where it's all housed there. He has a friend who posted something that was very interesting about reactions towards Jeff Bezos' announcement to give money away, as well as his space program. So I invited him, and he'll be on after the break. All right. So the question of the day is feedback. When to take it and when to reject it. So a lot of my life balance coaching clients come to me with feedback that they've gotten from other people, and with the question, is it something that is my issue or is it their issue? And I always love that word feedback. When someone says to me, can I give you some feedback? I usually say, I think so, but can you try not to get it all over me? Because sometimes people use the word feedback as an excuse to just give you their opinion, which is just their opinion, which isn't always the truth. So here's my rule on taking feedback. So if one random person says to you, you should or shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't said that, or you might want to think about doing something differently, the first thing I do is not hurt them. If you don't like what you're hearing, just kidding. The first thing is to take a breath and ask yourself, is this person someone who is really trying to help me? So how do you figure that out? You kind of look at that person, and are they someone who has a history of wanting the best for you? Do they have a history of being on your side? Have they, for the most part, things that they have shared with you before, have they helped you? Or is their motive a good one? Or is this person someone who has a history of trying to tear you down? Do they have a history of trying to put you down? Do they have ulterior motives? Because if you look bad, they look good. So that is absolutely considered the source. If you then say, okay, they do have my best, they do have my best, what is that word I'm looking for? If they do have best intentions and their intentions are to help me, then I look at the actual content of what they're saying. Now, if the content of what they're saying is something you've never heard before, then I usually say it's got to be 3. The rule of 3 is if 3 different people tell me to do the same thing or say the same thing or not 3 times, then it's something I want to pay attention to. But if it's a one-off, and maybe they're having a bad day, or it's just their opinion, and let's say 8 different people have said, I love your perfume, what is that you're wearing? And this one person says, that smells atrocious, don't wear it. Then I would, think about the 8 other people who have said that they actually enjoy the fragrance. If it's a matter of maybe too strong smelling and that person, or it's an allergy, then, if you may want to, for the sake of that person, if you spend a lot of time with them, not wear that. But I usually resort to my rule of three. 3 different people said 3 different things, 3 different times, the same thing, then it is something that I want to look at as feedback. So then that brings you to the bigger question of, well, if you don't like it, go away, right? I'm doing what I want. This is my life. I can live it the way I want, which is absolutely true. However, we don't live on a desert island, and we do live with people. And one of the fundamental processes in life that can bring you joy most of the time, sometimes not, but most of the time, is relationships. So it's not about you not being who you are, but it is about developing a dimension of yourself that works better with other people. So if you want to be effective with other people, then you do want to pay attention to whatever feedback is coming at you. Does that make sense? All right. That's the answer to today's question of the day. When we come back, I have a delightful interview with a guy that I met on Facebook. No, not on Tinder, on Facebook, actually through a post from one of my friends who has been a past guest, Anson Williams. And you know him as Potsy from Happy Days. He's been on my show multiple times. He's fabulous. And he had a post from Seth Greenleaf on his Facebook page that I read and was truly impressed with. So I reached out to Seth. He said yes. And so his interview after our commercial break here on Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, here on KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere on the station that leaves no listener behind. And we're back. You are tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. You know me as the Asian Oprah. You know that I want to balance out all of the bad news with the good news. So you are tuned to KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, streaming everywhere on every major platform, because the more happiness, the better. I'm on my Happy 88 mission. 88 million more happy people in the next 8 years. And so when I discover people who actually agree with everything that I think, I ask them on this show. And this is actually a kind of funny story. You all remember Anson Williams, Potsy from Happy Days, who's been a multiple time guest on my show turned friend, which is true of most of my 502 consecutive shows. That I, collect great people. And so Anson's feed had a story on it, and I don't usually have time to read long things, but something caught my eye, and it was a reaction piece to Jeff Bezos, his philanthropy, his shot to outer space. And so I thought I would invite Seth Greenleaf to the show to start talking about what he wrote. And you know me, headlines to heartlines, not just thinking about what's going on out there, but actually having it affect our hearts. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome him to my studio, Seth Greenleaf. So I have a friend, she doesn't have an answering machine. She has a questioning machine. And when you call her, she says, "Who are you? And what do you want?" So, Seth, who are you and what do you want?
I'm a theater producer and an entrepreneur and a dreamer and a builder. What I wanted from that post was to push back against some of the vitriol and the negativity that I kept seeing online, including from really close friends of mine, towards somebody who had just accomplished the first step of one of their lifelong dreams. And when I say lifelong, I mean, from my understanding, this was something that Jeff Bezos dreamt about as a child. And here he was accomplishing this kind of amazing threshold that has within it the capability of bettering our entire species. And the only thing I could see anywhere was just like this seething hatred towards him in general, billionaires, tons of really poorly researched misinformation on how he's lived his life or paid his taxes. And just it was, I don't know Jeff Bezos. I'm not, his biographer, friend. I don't represent Amazon in any way, shape, or form. I just was really kind of surprised by this. I guess what I interpreted to be kind of almost anti entrepreneurial spirit. And so I just, kind of wrote my feelings about it one morning, tried not to be harsh or judgmental towards anybody, but also did want to kind of push back on subtly to say, hey, look, when you have such strong and nasty opinions towards people who are out there living their dreams in life and taking risks and achieving, you're kind of sending a message to yourself that this is bad, this is wrong. And in a way, you're limiting your own potential. And and it was met with some controversy from friends of mine. Somebody asked me to share it. And then when it became public, it kind of just took on its own momentum.
Yeah, it did, because I did stalk you. And so because I was so interested and your posts are great, but you're not necessarily, hundreds of views and all of that consistently. I mean, you're a wonderful, it's so sweet. Most of your posts are trying to get pets adopted, which I thought was so sweet. And then you put this piece on and it goes crazy, which is great. So just to go back and fill in some of this for people who are not aware, again, I'm sure you are, but just, I wanted to put the moose on the table with some specifics. That's my Canadian version of the elephant in the room. So we have a guy who came from very humble beginnings, as far as I know, and he creates a company that goes crazy. So Amazon has gone crazy. I mean, it started in his garage, as far as I understand. It was an idea. He was not from money, right? He came from pretty humble beginnings, as far as I know, right?
He was born to a 16 and I think 17-year-old teenage couple with a father who was working in Walmart for $1.25 an hour. And since I posted that, there were certain particular objections, about 5 of them that were pretty consistent, including one of the bigger ones was people saying that he was born into wealth and his parents this and that. And I know that family loaned him money when Amazon was struggling at one point in its process. And that was a couple $100,000. And with that became the assumption that he came from this family of means and that he was a rich kid and this, that, and the other. Well, I mean, again, I'm not a professional biographer on the topic, but one of the stories of his that I remember reading was about him flipping burgers at McDonald's at 16, which, doesn't mean that his family may not have money, but then you do a little more digging and his parents were teenagers and divorced and his stepfather was a Cuban immigrant. So I don't see where, and I'm not aware of them coming from some great money, but between when he was born and when he needed a business loan to save his dream company, it sounds like his family was able to put together a significant amount of money. I don't think that disqualifies someone from being an estimable person in their pursuits. Yeah. So I don't know where that vitriol stems from. I don't care if you're Donald Trump, who starts with $100 million. I mean, the question to me is, what do you do with that $100 million? Right. Have you turned it into something incredible, something that most of us, might want to think about aspiring to? And certainly in Bezos's case, I mean, there's knocks that are worth discussing, but you can't disown the guy coming from whatever he came from, and it sounded like they were relatively humble beginnings, into being the richest man in the world.
Mm-hmm. And his path was not an overnight success. No one's is. He worked he had both business acumen. He had an intuitive ability, had an entrepreneurial spirit. He never gave up. He did what he did, and he amassed a lot of money. And you pointed out something that is one of the pieces I wanted to talk about, which, the root of all evil is money, and the root of all evil is not money. Money is just a tool to do things that you want to do. And here's a guy that, between hard work and success, has amassed enough money to be philanthropic and send people into outer space, right? Along with 3 other people. So, this whole backlash, I loved what you said. If you have $200 million, you have the right and the absolute good fortune to spend it any way you want. If you don't want to take $200 million and give it to philanthropically, don't. But what is this massive, bitter, resentful, angry, how dare you? Why are you doing this? It's the same flavor that someone else who really, is totally opposite is the Dalai Lama. So I listen to him when I can, because I love his message. I was on a live stream and there's so much hate towards a man that you would never think there is any reason to hate, right? So then it makes me wonder, is this the pandemic? Is it the technology? Why is it that people, and I've never gotten as much hateful reaction, thank God. It's still not a lot, to my stuff. I've been doing this for 9 years. I have a show and people are, negatively saying stuff. And it's like, if you want to do your own show, you can do it any way you want, but you don't have your own show. So why are you attacking me? It just doesn't make sense. So help me with that.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that are working there. I think that it is always easier to live everyone else's life, right? For some reason, there's some component of us that can look objectively from the outside and see exactly what everyone else is supposed to be doing. But we all know that it's much more difficult when it's on the inside. They're your challenges. They are a specific brand of circumstances and challenges that were designed, by this universe for you. And lots of us don't want to face those challenges. I don't want to face those challenges most days, but not facing them doesn't get me much further on my journey towards my goals. And especially judging and having such strong opinions about what other people are supposed to be doing on their journeys, I think is also very counterproductive, because now, 1, I'm not focused on my path, and 2, I'm adding judgment into the equation, which doesn't typically help anyone. And so I think that there's a way in which you could sort of view the fantasy of Jeff Bezos and what he's capable of doing. And then people process that through their own filters of saying, well, look, this is what I would do. And I would fix this and I would fix that. And I would do all of these great things. And I think that's a very easy thing to say from your couch or, your desk or wherever you are. But whatever it took for him to get there, whatever drove him to that place and his passion to be who he is right now, we can never know what that journey is and really should never judge it, especially if, it was done legally. I mean, it's not like, if someone said, yeah, well, was Hitler following his passion? I'd say, well, that's a great conversation, because if your behavior is so negatively impactful to so many, then where do we have the right to say, hey, your passion is affecting my choices to live? And in Bezos's case, that's not it. And when you read the Facebook threads, you constantly hear people say, well, he got where he got on by breaking the backs of people and treating them like slaves and taking advantage of workers. And lots of these could be fair points and fair game, and they're worth discussing for sure. But I don't believe that people, for the most part, are victims of their circumstances. I don't think you are in this country as a worker. I think that, and I don't say this lightly, because facing a job or facing the thought of leaving or losing a job and facing that uncertainty is terrifying, right? It's a very scary experience. And I know people stay in jobs that they don't like or feel good about because they're scared of moving on from them. That, however, is not necessarily Jeff Bezos' fault, and it's not necessarily his responsibility, although from what I've seen and read, he has made choices to improve the working conditions for his people. When Amazon has been called out on bad practices, they have responded. They seem as if they've been relatively transparent. And, nobody expands a business at the rate that he has over the last 2 decades and doesn't make mistakes. It just doesn't happen. And as a business owner, I also know sometimes you get into the drive of achieving a goal. And for someone like him, whose vision was so far down the road, I'm sure there was a very intense driver in him that said, yes, worker conditions, but what about the next factory? What about the next distribution center? What about the next? And I'm sure in that process, there were times where workers got overlooked and were probably not treated well. Mm-hmm. We're human. If he's going back and he's trying to solve some of those problems and fix those things now, and I know Amazon pays a higher minimum wage than the federal government does. So it's like you've got to at least be fair in looking that none of us are good or bad. We're all oscillating between the two in every decision we make. So to treat any human being that way, it was just so, I don't know. And to your question, where does that come from? I do think technology is a part of it. I do think that technology has made it easier for us to compare and despair, and it's made it easier for us to throw darts at one another. Yeah. And not to our betterment.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're wondering who I have got on my hot seat today, his name is Seth Greenleaf, and he's here because I read a piece that he wrote in reaction to all of the hate towards Jeff Bezos when he decided to donate, and also his space program. And so I thought it would be interesting to have this discussion because it is part of the headlines. People constantly criticize me for putting my head in the sand, but frankly, most of the time it's safer and more pleasant down there without addressing all of the hate talk all the time and reacting to all the news that's actually old and a weapon of mass distraction that's out there. But I do listen to the news. I do read things. Jeff's here with his, that I absolutely agree with, assessment of, it's kind of ridiculous, the way that we attack without doing our research. A lot of the times we listen to what's out there, and if it bleeds, it leads. And also, I wanted to say I did read a piece about Jeff stepping down because he wanted to have enough time to pursue not just a space program, but one of the goals to make Amazon the #1 place for people to work. That was his stated goal. And there's more where that came from. We're going to continue our conversation after the break with Seth Greenleaf as we talk about headlines to heartlines, what's going on out there, how it impacts us, and how we can feel better about what's going on. We'll be right back. In 2 and 2, peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. Don't go away. And you're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa here on KCAA AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5. And we're back with my guest today, who is Seth Greenleaf. He is out of New York, I think, in South Florida or wherever he is. And we've been talking a little bit of everywhere. And we've been talking about his reaction piece on Facebook. But more than that, why are we so mean on social media? Why do we begrudge people who are doing well and all of that? So we're continuing with that talk.
World peace through inner peace. And that was something that was so I don't want to say hypocrisy because that sounds judgmental, but just in terms of antithetical behavior, I was saying, wow, why are we being so vicious towards a human being who's living their dreams? That to the best of my knowledge, isn't killing, isn't going out to kill millions and millions of people. And then I received all this hateful vitriol as a result. And because he's not a good enough person, apparently, he doesn't deserve to have all this success being expressed by people who are expressing such nasty hostility. And I'm sitting there thinking, if you focused on where you're coming from right now, you make the world a better place instead of worrying about what he's doing over there. And that's, I think, part of that social media dynamic is what's everybody else doing. And, as I know from what you said, what we're doing is what matters. Each one of us can bring some peace to the world through finding that peace within us. So why are we so obsessed with somebody who's never done anything to us directly, who we've never met, whose journey we couldn't possibly comprehend? Because most of us barely have scratched the surface on knowing our own journeys.
Yes. That's why I asked you the question, who are you and what do you want? I mean, that question itself, how many times have you asked, not you, I'm sure you have many times, but for many people, it's, you don't know what you want. You don't know what you want yourself. You know what they shouldn't have. You know what they shouldn't do, but you don't even know what you want. And I'll be the first one. I can remember, stomping out of the room with my husband one more time, not looking at me when I came in the room after a long, work trip, and he didn't even look up at all. Did not look up to say hello, didn't acknowledge me, and I was so pissed off. One more time, stomped up the stairs, dove under the covers. Why doesn't he listen to me? Why doesn't he know? Why doesn't he attend to me? Why doesn't he, do something nice for me? Why doesn't he blah, 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 blah? And all of a sudden, the skies opened, the voice came down and said, do you do nice things for you? Do you know what you want? Do you like you? Do you attend to you? Do you value what you think? Do you value what you say? And I went, shirt, fork. I can't believe that I'm, decades into this thing called life, and I can't even figure that out for myself. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a very funny thing. The Zen or Buddhist story, you can carpet the world or you can wear sandals. And it's amazing. I notice it for myself. I will spend so much time and energy trying to change the world, to construct it in the way that I think is finally going to give me what I want. Or I can do that, kind of challenging work on myself to get there. And undoubtedly, it's by 100 million miles the shorter route, but it's the one that we spend our entire lives avoiding sometimes. And I get it. I don't say that with judgment. It's scary looking in that mirror and saying, I love you, and you're enough, and all those things that we have to do. And it's not easy, and life is not easy. But that other thing, that avoiding our pain, that expressing the pain that we feel towards ourselves, towards the world, all it does is just remove us an extra layer from where we need to be with it. And I know the Buddhist practice of resilience, the point of meditation, of the resilience of staying in that place and then being able to stay there for others. I'm realizing more and more as I get older that that's one of the most important practices there is. And I think the first step of that is a level of self-tolerance, to be able to endure some of those really uncomfortable and nasty things we think and feel about ourselves, but to still stay there and to remember that that's not what we really are. And imagine if we all spent 10% of our time that we spend bitching each other out on Facebook doing that. I wonder, maybe we wouldn't have to look to Jeff Bezos to solve all our problems for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell you, this whole experience of that post was just completely surreal. And when you said that's not normal, I don't even typically post the stuff publicly. It's just, me and my friends, someone asked me to share it. What a litmus test for the way people think, and these sort of two extreme versions of how we view reality. You have those that have this scarcity consciousness and want to tear down whoever they think is taking more than their share, and then you have people like us who believe in abundance and say, what are you so worried about what this person's doing? Somebody having a baby in China is not stopping you from having a baby. There's 8 million people on the planet. they were never limited to a certain supply. So it's like, what is all of this focus on? And even to me, it was like symbolic that the guy was exploring space, like the ultimate abundance. we live on a tiny planet amongst billions of stars, amongst billions of galaxies, and like we want to attack each other because there's not enough. And I'm like, I guess if that's the way you see the world, I can see where all of these things become very threatening and hostile. But
well, lack and limitation is a bad habit and a BS, a belief system that many people have, especially in America. And it is, it's just a constant source of conflict, a constant source of dis-ease, a dis-ease with life that it's kind of ridiculous, but that is the problem. And if we want to get to the solution, we have to quit thinking that there's not enough. The best example that I love to use is the breath. When I take a breath, I take nothing from you. And that is the symbol of abundance that is all around us all the time, the breath.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we could just remember that, but our entire, I know what I want you to watch. I'll send you the link. I just put my first short film together, actually.
Oh, cool.
And it's called The New PPP, Post-Pandemic Possibilities. And I say, we're built on the premise that you have to climb your way to the top. It's dog eat dog and a rat race. I mean, if that isn't indicative of the issues that we are facing in organizations, in business, in the dis-ease with life, in hating our jobs, that has really become apparent now that, there's such a job shortage. You would think everybody's going to rush back to a job after the pandemic. And it's like, there's a job shortage. It's like, yay, that's a hashtag COVID silver lining that we're shifting the way we're thinking about where we want to work. I mean, that's the good news, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And, it's one of those, I'm an entrepreneur too. It took me like decades to figure that out. And you're an entrepreneur. And I say all the time, if you're not happy working for someone else's dreams, then you might want to go off and do something on your own. But there are people who would prefer to work for people's dreams and get fairly compensated. And there's nothing wrong with that. And from what I understand, that's what happened. That's what happens to people who are happily working at Amazon. And so to take task on their behalf when they're not even complaining, one, is ridiculous. And number two, if you want to have your money to decide to do with it as you please, you have to stop. The grass is greener on the other side. I saw that there's a post that said, if the grass is greener on the other side, water your own lawn. and that speaks to just about, one of the main points in what you wrote and how you so nicely, non-judgmentally, charmingly said, but I got the message. And hopefully, this whole, it's like the people, my father who's in heaven right now, that sounded like a prayer. No, my beloved dad who's in heaven, he used to say, critics are like one-legged runners. They don't do it. They can't do it, but they will tell you how to do it because they know everything. And I think that if everyone on social media said, stop thinking that everybody had a right to their opinion, it would be a lot nicer in the morning when you start scrolling through, your social media. But it's this preoccupation. Is it because the pandemic brought the worst out in us, do you think? Or has it always been there, and now because we had time to deal with it, it's raised its ugly head?
I don't know how much the pandemic, has been a part of it, to be honest. But I think that social media in general has normalized the experience of sharing extreme opinions about things that we have very little personal experience about. It's this kind of fodder. It's this hobby And unfortunately, I mean, we kind of all play into it, because everything from clickbait to, again, like a post like this that gets whatever thousands of reactions, you're drawn to the flame. But we also have to ask ourselves, is this helping us? I think it's always a good question. I remember reading once, the path to enlightenment was paying attention to how everything made you feel. That if you only did that, I ate this, how did it make me feel? I said this, how did it make me feel? If you only did that, eventually you would achieve enlightenment, because we are naturally drawn to the things that make us feel good. And I don't think that the social media stuff makes us feel good. I think what it does is it distracts us and it confuses us. It makes us feel good in the moment, but not necessarily long term. So someone's having frustrations about their own life, their own experience. And maybe to your point, the pandemic exacerbates that because people are out of work or they're uncertain and they're scared. They can feel those feelings. And by feeling those feelings, which is not easy, they may very well become informed as to what next step to take, or they can avoid those feelings. And something like social media and jumping on people and getting into fights with strangers, these are great ways to avoid your own feelings and to get a rush of adrenaline and self-righteousness. And you could tell by the tone of a lot of those people, it was just this, sort of vomiting negativity that they may be feeling over their circumstances. And so, on the one hand, I guess it's a release and it's a relief, but I don't know if long term it's going to help anyone grow or improve themselves. And so I think that there's a downside to it. Personally, I think there's a downside to anything that pulls us away from our feelings, even when our feelings are uncomfortable.
I agree with you totally. I'm all about feel the feelings fully and then release them. Because any kind of feeling housed, especially negative ones, gets infected. So that's not what we want to do. So, oh boy, I hope I didn't forget that thought when you were talking. Shoot. It had something. So I'm a student of the law of attraction. So I'm all about, I want to choose the best feeling thought. That's always my goal, right? Does this thought feel good? Does this thought feel good? No. Well, then let's change it. So I totally agree on that one. So your friends, because this is real, right? Your friends that were not happy with what you said or your reaction, who were heaven bent on painting out Jeff to be a bad guy or whatever the reaction was. And this is happening all over the place. Family members disagreeing with other family members heatedly, friends disagreeing with friends, the division at an all-time high across America about so many different things. And then this whole thing called the cancel culture, which I totally, I defend it in some ways because I am about, am I having the best feeling thought right now? No. Well, then maybe I need to step away from the situation. I need to step away from that person. I need to step away from anything that is creating more turmoil in my mind. So, but that is kind of cancel culture. And as bad as I feel about that, it's always been my order: God, self, and others. I don't want to put other people's feelings that I can't change above my own feelings about what I think and who I am.
Well, I don't think that doesn't sound like cancel culture to me, though. That sounds like self-care. So I think that, I would say that within self-care, we give the dignity to allow other people to care for themselves or to experience the consequences of their actions and words. And I don't think that we have to necessarily make ourselves their consequences, which is, I think, what happens in cancel culture. I think when people are
there's a little slip there.
Yeah, when people are negative, they will feel negatively as a result of their behavior and their thoughts and their actions. We don't need to punish them. When Buddha said, will we be punished for our anger? And Buddha said, yes, your anger will punish you. It's like we're all struggling and stumbling our way through this journey of life. It's not such an easy process. And all this finger pointing that we do towards one another, canceling one another, condemning one another, I guess I just it's not easy. It's not easy to see bad behavior, but I can't help but think that people behave badly because there is some part of them that is in pain. And life, as I said, is not always easy, and we struggle. So when someone's struggling, is that the time that we need to absolutely gang up and layer in on them, and try to obliterate their existence? Or is it the time that maybe they need a hand from the most unexpected source? And I guess, to the best of my ability, I try to live my life that way. It's not easy, and I'm far from perfect. Even when it comes to like this post, I can't, help but want to react to the things that I read, and people make themselves so ugly. But that's like first, second layer of what's really going on in somebody's life. That's their worst, their most ignorant defense mechanism, and it takes resilience to stay in the face of that, and to maybe allow the next layer or two to come out from that person, and to see, maybe what else is there, and maybe to give each other a break from time to time.
That sounds perfect. I can't say it any better than you just did. You heard it here on Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa. Thank you so much, Seth. We're out of time, but the last question I ask all my guests is, to who and what are you most grateful for?
To who and what am I most grateful for? To be honest with you, I am most grateful to the little boy inside of me that, in spite of everything he's ever felt and all the challenges that he's had, never quit, and never does quit. Because, as we said a couple of times here, life is not easy. These paths are treacherous at times. And, you're born, you have you, the end, you have you. Got to have a relationship with that. You got to start somewhere. So I say it as part of my own self-loving, that I really appreciate that little boy who never gave up and continues to make his way and forge his path in this world.
Wonderful. I'm so grateful that I got a chance to meet that little boy and the grown-up version of him. Thank you so much for coming on with me. I have my guests also, when I do on location, do this with me. So if you wouldn't mind, it's a peace in, yes, and peace out. World peace through inner peace. All right. Thank you so much, Seth.
I love it.
And I wish you the best. And that's it for today's Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa. Have the best day ever. It's been a tough, horrible, unanticipated, unprepared for, crappy year called the pandemic. But before we rush back to normal, a normal where there were a lot of overworked, underpaid, angry, frustrated, and depressed people who hated their jobs and lived for their weekends, can we consider a new normal? Take a breath with me. And consider a new PPP, post-pandemic possibilities. What if conforming to the world was exploring the world? What if the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, little girl, turns into, how many streets of life do you want to explore? What if there was another way to grow up believing in yourself so that you don't have to attend the school of hard knocks? What if the current push to do well in subjects that you are not good at, or choose a school that you can't afford, or to declare a major when you are still a minor in life are not the pressures that cook us raw? What if there was another career path where words like rat race and dog eat dog and climbing or clawing our way to the top are not in our career ladder vocabulary?
What if big business control and imbalance, resulting in people stuck in jobs they hate, contributing to dreams that are not their own, were BS belief systems that had to be called out? Like cookies that had to be deleted in our mind browser. What if the lesson in the pandemic is that the trajectory that we have been on needs a hard reset? What if the real virus in our society is currently structured to help a few and hurt many? What if we could say, help our own and help others in the same breath? What if we grew up with global patriotism instead of warring nationalism and not afraid of helping socialism? What if we were taught how to see past skin color and learn how to value others for who they are? What if you were taught how to value who you are, especially when value was not found growing up at home? What if I knew I was important without anyone telling me? What if I knew that I was of value so that I didn't have to go around asking people to appraise me? What if world peace started with an okayness with ourselves, who we are and what we think in the imperfect, perfect persona that we splatter on this world? What if we learned self-care skills so that we wouldn't thrash about so much when we were in the middle of the dis-ease with life? What if we could care for others without hurting myself? What if we valued ourselves enough to take care of our own selves, our body, our mind, and our soul? What if we each took responsibility for our own choices and quit blaming others when we insist on dragging our past along with us as an excuse to behave badly? What if we learned relationship skills as soon as we learned addition, subtraction, and how to dissect a frog? What if we knew that all life was valuable, even when we disagreed on how people were living? What if we cut people some more slack when we know they should know better, but because of their own humanness, they temporarily missed a take? What if the purpose of life is not to die with the most toys to leave our squabbling relatives? What if the purpose of life was to do things that we enjoy most of the time, have relationships that we enjoy most of the time, and use our unique talents, gifts, and abilities to fully express in the dash between birth and death? What if there is nothing to be afraid of? What if everything that happens to us is for our divine and best good, even if it doesn't feel good? What if death is not that big of a deal? What if the concept of death is not the hill we want to die on? What if tragedy is not really tragic? What if people dying in tragedy has purpose in releasing more love that we may have trapped inside our minds and our bodies? What if challenges that we face because of skin color or physical limitations or gender or our differences are all conditions that can grow and chisel and elevate us into the most magnificent of sculptures? What if I can turn every single bad, shitty thing that ever happened to me into rich fertilizer to birth and grow all of the potential that I was born with? What if life does not suck? What if I knew I was one of a kind wonderful, that I had a unique gift, talent, and ability to unleash on life one glorious year, day, month, and season of life? What if, as a direct result of this horrible pandemic, we could rise out of the ashes with the new PPP, post-pandemic possibilities? Well, you can. You can rise. You can live in my what if. It just starts with choosing happiness. Choosing to love this thing called life and drop the rock of BS belief systems that have tricked you into thinking that you are not enough. Because all of this is possible if you choose to believe in you first and foremost. Because the buck stops right over here with you, with me, and with us. The sooner you turn "it's impossible" to "I'm possible," the what ifs become possible too. Because you are loving, lovable, and loved, wrapped in a warm blanket of worthiness. But it may start with getting out of bed and making it what if starts with you. Hi, I'm Dr. Marissa, broadcasting live from this thing called life, trying to get you to drink my rose-colored Kool-Aid and join my Happy 88 mission, 88 million more happy people in the next 8 years.